Hey everyone, Jarb here. Last year, Poor Things was easily one of my favorite movies of the year. I loved the rich world design, beautiful sets, strange music, and just absurdness Yorgos Lanthimos was playing with the entire time. Although it certainly was controversial, I definitely do think people were a bit crazy when they were saying Emma Stone didn't deserve the Oscar considering how phenomenal she was in Poor Things. You could say someone deserves something more, while also acknowledging that the other person was deserving as well, but that's a bit of a tangent I could get into. I had only seen The Lobster from Yorgos before this. It was quite the fan of that one as well, and since then I checked out The Killing of a Sacred Deer and just loved it. So all that's to say, I quickly have become a huge Yorgos Lanthimos fan, and you can imagine my excitement when a few months ago I saw we were immediately getting another movie from him with an equally, if not more, stacked cast. I'm definitely glad to report that Kinds of Kindness did in many ways live up to my expectations and easily surpassed them a lot of the time. Kinds of Kindness obviously is written and directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. It stars Emma Stone, Jesse Plemons, Willem Dafoe, Hong Chow, and a whole bunch of other incredibly talented people. The movie is comprised of 3 semi-short stories. The first follows a man with almost no agency in his life. The second is about a man who believes his wife is hiding something from him. And the third is about a woman tracking down people born with an identical twin. Those are relatively vague descriptions on purpose, because I'm going to do my best to avoid spoilers in this video, especially considering the completely absurd direction these stories end up going. It's kind of hard to call these short stories considering this movie is just shy of a 3-hour runtime and each story lasts almost an hour. Considering the only recent short story movie I could think of that I saw and came out recently is The French Dispatch, which is less than 2 hours. I have somewhat of a hard time calling these short stories. It's more like an anthology movie, but that's just semantics, I guess. I think it wouldn't be wrong to say this movie feels like a bit of a throwback for Yorgos. This movie is almost all dry humor, and the writing and performances here are more reminiscent of The Lobster than Poor Things. While Poor Things accentuated the absurdity of its world with its really over-the-top and comical performances, Kinds of Kindness instead approaches that absurdity with a really great contrast of dullness that makes for probably the funniest parts of the movie. Each character feels a bit tired, annoyed, and anxious while not being overtly any of them. There's just this constant pressure on each character in the movie that almost always is conveyed through monotone performances that only occasionally break into something more. Everyone in the cast is doing a really great job here. Emma Stone is once again phenomenal. I really loved Mamadou Achi, I hope I'm not mispronouncing that, and Hong Chow in this. And it feels like the first time in a while I've seen them get a significant role in something, at least something I really enjoy, so I was very glad about that. The obvious standout here though is Jesse Plemons, who is just downright amazing in nearly every scene he's in. Each of the 3 stories is going for a somewhat similar tone and atmosphere, with a few minute changes that Plemons just perfectly embodies, which to me is even more impressive considering he's the main character of 2 of the stories and a pretty integral part of the third. He's another one I'm glad to see get all the love he has here. It seems like a lot of Plemons' roles have been way more minor, and yet he's still the best part of all those movies, so seeing him here as the main player was easily my favorite part and made it just so much better for me. I just can't imagine someone for this role in a Yorgos movie doing any better than Plemons does here. Like I mentioned though, everyone here is really doing a great job. I really love how Hong Chow and Willem Dafoe play off each other in the third story. They don't get a ton of time together, but when they do, they just match each other amazingly. Emma Stone, like I said, is just a perfect match for Yorgos Lanthimos and what he's going for in each story here. Similarly to Plemons, she plays a pretty major role here in all 3 stories. It definitely lands the feeling that Yorgos is going for each time while still feeling so different and like such a unique character in each of the 3 stories. I mentioned her earlier, but Margaret Qualley is great in this, both in her extended role in the third story and even just her smile in the second story was honestly a really great part of the movie to me. So much going on behind that face that we are only slightly privy to, and I just love it. One of Yorgos' most interesting choices here to me is returning to the modern world, something he hasn't really done since The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and even then, it feels much more important and prevalent in Kinds of Kindness than it does in something like The Killing of a Sacred Deer. I'm not entirely sure what Yorgos is trying to say here, but it feels like he's commenting on our current forms of love and understanding for each other, and how our modern obsessions and vices have all changed that and become so much larger than we could have ever imagined. Our fast and loud cars, our sleek and flat buildings, our modern sexual vices, and so much more is being tackled here, and I think Yorgos' decision to accentuate or highlight these aspects of our current age and use them all to make us face these strange feelings of love and loneliness in a really modern and resonant way was amazing. I really believe that this was a specific choice. I mean, if you could do a little math on the spot and are a nerd like me, you would have noticed that the movie is explicitly taking place in 2022, or at least one of the stories is. And it's not like Yorgos hasn't made commentaries on our modern age and obsessions in his other movies. It's just really interesting to see him so directly address us in our current day setting. I don't think you would be wrong to say this movie isn't Yorgos' easiest to understand. I don't think I came out of the movie with any super strong feelings on the meaning until roughly an hour after seeing it, and I didn't even have any finalized feelings about this till the day after seeing it. When I'm writing this, plus I'm seeing it again this weekend, and my thoughts might even change then again, so that all really is to say that it might take some time or another viewing for people to get this, and that's fine. There were people in my theater behind me who by the time the third act started pretty audibly said, "This is pretty awful. This makes no sense at all. I'm not enjoying this." And the lady to my right kept turning her phone right to my face to check the time. So it's safe to say this one probably isn't as universally enjoyable as Poor Things, and while I also personally wouldn't say I like this more than Poor Things, I still think this is one of the best movies of the year, and an incredibly strong entry in Yorgos' filmography. It isn't the most explicit about its meaning, or how you're supposed to feel. It certainly doesn't end in a way I think a lot of people will like, but I think this might be the most Yorgos Lanthimos movie. It really feels like his most lifeless and maybe even ironic, yet it just seems like he and the crew were having a lot of fun bringing this thing to life. Despite, like I said, being anything but explicit or overt about the messaging, I could certainly say a lot of this plays as Yorgos being his most confident or assured in his vision. Like, it's really easy for a filmmaker on top of the world, having won a ton of Oscars last year and having tons of projects greenlit. It's pretty easy for a creative in that situation to play things a bit more safe, but I'm glad that he doubled down on embracing the weirdness and absurdity of it all, and in an incredibly different way from his previous entries. Sure, there isn't a ton that directly links the three stories here. I came out of this only recognizing some stuff with the name RMF and the title, but like I said, it doesn't really hold your hand when it comes to the deeper meaning and themes behind this movie. Speaking of the meaning, I think the title is maybe obviously being pretty literal as to the meaning. This is about different kinds of absurd and toxic kindness, cults, obsession, romantic love. Yorgos is commenting on how isolating, damaging relationships can be, and how our modern vices can exacerbate that problem. It's been mentioned by a lot of people discussing this movie, but the cinematography, framing, and direction create this feeling of isolation and alienation that the movie is really going for. This movie is shot by Robbie Ryan, who also shot Poor Things and The Favorite for Yorgos, as well as The Meyerowitz Stories and Marriage Story, which are all phenomenal looking movies. Although I haven't seen The Favorite, I have seen Poor Things, and the large landscape-esque shots Ryan and Yorgos were using there are here again, but they instead use those shots to really single out characters and highlight the loneliness of all of our characters. I love these super wide and deep shots that paint us this incredibly alienating and lonely picture. The world around our characters feels hollow as what's inside them, and I think that level of visual storytelling really elevates what Kind of Kindness is going for. The music also does a lot to elevate this feeling of isolation. The music always feels like it's yearning for more, or leaving the audience feeling abandoned, just to cue in right as things are reaching their most depraved. Almost like it's taunting us and knows how much we would normally crave something like that, but almost how dreadful it feels here. It's incredibly unsurprising that Jerskin Fendrix did the score for both this and Poor Things, considering not only how similar they sound sonically, but also how well they capture that strange, and like I said, depraved feeling Yorgos is going for here and in most of his movies. All of this to say, Kinds of Kindness is a strong entry in Yorgos' filmography, like I said, and honestly one of the most captivating movies I saw this year. With so many fearing after Poor Things that Yorgos might play it a bit safe, or not try anything new, it's amazing to see just how wrong everyone was. I definitely recommend you see this in theaters while it's still available, and I think that's just about going to do it. So as always, thank you for watching, please like and subscribe, and go watch Kinds of Kindness.